So welcome back, Level 1 physicists and Earth space scientists, to the next lesson looking at your 1.1 internal the linear relationship experiment and research assignment. So today we're looking at planning your experiment. Okay, how do you do that? So the experiment itself is basically the key part of the scientific method. Okay, it's basically how you're going to see if your prediction you made in the previous lesson is right or wrong. Okay, so you have to design an experiment that somebody can follow, and also it actually has to test accurately your prediction. Okay, and to do this, you have to explain how you created or made your experiment, and this is known as the method in the experiment. So looking at the method, okay, you need to be able to describe your method. So when you're writing your method, you have to describe how your equipment is set up. Now you can take a photograph of your equipment and label it, or create a scientific drawing. You have to describe how the dependent variable is measured. So you've got to work out what your dependent variable is, and then how you're going to measure your dependent variable. And we'll look at that in the next slide, what the dependent variable is. Describe how the independent variable was changed. Okay, so how you went about changing your independent variable, and describing how other variables could be controlled. So you've got to consider what things you're going to keep the same. Okay, so as I said previously, you have to, a good way of doing this is including a labeled diagram or a labeled photograph of how your equipment is set up when you do the experiment. Okay, and going back to the previous lesson now, since we're discussing dependent and independent variables, the prediction that you created in the previous lesson has to relate to both the dependent and the independent variable. Okay, so if something changes, then something else changes. So looking at the independent variable in your experiment is the one that you're going to be changing. Okay, so in your report, you have to say what the independent variable is, how you went about changing it, identify and also justify the range. Okay, so why you chose a particular value as your minimum value, and why you chose a particular value for the maximum value, because the range is basically the maximum value minus the minimum value. Test at least 3 different values for your independent variable. Okay, and that's a way you can increase the accuracy. Okay, and then describe any challenges you had when measuring your independent variable and how you solved those problems. And that can relate to why you've chosen the range that you have chosen. So then we've also got the dependent variable, and the dependent variable is the one you're going to measure when you're after you've changed the independent variable. Okay, so again, in your report, you have to tell what the dependent variable is, or say what the the dependent variable is. Describe how you measured the dependent variable. Take at least 3 values for the dependent variable when you've changed the independent variable only once, and describe again how you've increased the accuracy of your dependent variable. Okay, maybe it's in a little hint could be, well, why are you taking 3 values? Okay, and then describe any challenges and solutions that you encountered when you were measuring your dependent variable. And the last kind of variable is the control variables. Okay, so again, you're stating at least one control variable, which you have to keep the same, and then explain, well, what would happen if you didn't keep that variable the same? Okay, describe how you controlled your control variable. So for example, if it's a pendulum experiment, maybe you kept the door closed so wind wasn't rushing in, so it would affect the pendulum. And then explain the effect on the experiment if it was not controlled. So again, with the pendulum, then you wouldn't really know the time period for the pendulum, because the wind may also affect it. And that's where accuracy and precision comes in. Okay, so in the English language, they sometimes mix up, but in physics, precision is how close values are together, as you can see on that dartboard there. Okay, it's low accuracy, high precision on the extreme left. Accuracy is how close the values are to the actual value, so that's what we see in the middle example. And really for our results, what we're looking for is both precision and accuracy. Okay, so close together and close to the actual value. Okay, that third example on the extreme right. So Finally, in terms of taking measurements, when you're taking measurements of both the independent and dependent variable, know how to use the equipment before, or the instrument you're using to measure with before you actually do the measurement. Know how to increase the accuracy, and then also state the correct units for your measurements. Okay, so that's how we start building a method to actually start the experiment.